All right, so I am letting people in as they hop on and doing the introduction. So again, bear with me with multitasking this morning. I'm Melissa Keeney. For those that don't know me, the Director of Corporate Engagement and Impact for EarthShare North Carolina. Let one person in, hold on. Thank you guys for joining us for our second Lunchtime Bites of the campaign season. For those that don't know what this is, we do this during campaign season to educate employees across the state about the wonderful North Carolina-based member nonprofits that we partner with, and to show you how you can support their work, support our work this campaign season. All right, I'm going to get started. Before I pass it over to our speakers for today from Conserving Carolina and North Carolina Coastal Fed, I'm just going to give a brief intro of who we are. EarthShare North Carolina was founded 30 years ago. This is our 30th anniversary. We admit someone. For those that haven't seen it yet, we did just launch a fundraiser for our 30th year expansion campaign. It is all over our socials, our website. I can pop it in the link in the chat after this as well, but you can find it on our Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn at EarthShareNC. You can find it on our website, earthsharenc.org. So I encourage you to look out for that and see how we are planning to expand. But we were founded with the goal to connect more people and resources to environmental conservation. And we do this through workplace, partnering with companies like you all for workplace giving campaigns and through employee engagement programs. Most of you are probably familiar with our corporate partner program, which essentially just allows us to promote our member nonprofits and their work while educating employees about the wonderful work being done in our state relating to environmental conservation. So we partner with 23 North Carolina-based members and over 70 national member nonprofits, all working to protect our water, our land, wildlife, promote clean energy and air policies, create equitable spaces and policies, and creating climate change solutions. Just to give you an overview of some of those, these are all the 23 North Carolina-based nonprofits that we partner with. And thank you for whoever just let them in. And without, first, actually, you can view recordings of Lunchtime Bites if you missed last one. Please join us for the one next week on November 2nd, same time, 12 to 12:30. We will hear from North Carolina Wildlife Federation and the Carolina Tiger Rescue. And again, you can review recordings or register at this link. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to David Lee, the Natural Resources Manager at Conserving Carolina, who's going to give a brief intro into their work. And we will hold a very brief 2-minute Q&A afterwards, but feel free to pop any questions in the chat and we will get to them after David's done speaking.
Sorry, guys, I had trouble finding the unmute button. Thank you for the introduction and thank you all for having me today. I hope you're enjoying some good lunch while you are here. As Melissa said, I'm David Lee. I'm the Natural Resources Manager for Conserving Carolina. And I'm planning to give you a really quick overview of one of our more recently completed restoration projects called the Mud Creek Confluence Restoration Project. But first, I wanted to give you a really quick overview of Conserving Carolina. So we are a regional land trust with our mission to protect, restore, and inspire an appreciation for the natural world. We accomplish this mission in a variety of ways, as you can see here on the screen. But as a land trust, our main game is land protection through conservation easements or land acquisition. And to date, we've protected over 45,000 acres of land in Henderson, Polk, Transylvania, and surrounding counties here in Western North Carolina. And we've helped create, protect, and expand many well-known public lands, including DuPont State Recreational Forest, Chimney Rock State Park, Mountain Bogs National Wildlife Refuge, and Headwater State Forest, just to name a few. But land protection aside, we also do a lot of really cool, other really cool things, including getting folks outdoors by creating trails and greenways, such as the Hickory Nut Gorge State Trail and the Acosta Greenway. We also implement some really awesome stream, wetland, and floodplain restoration projects, and that's what I'm going to briefly talk to you about today. So this is the Mud Creek Confluence Floodplain Restoration Project, and it's located in central Henderson County, near the town of Mills River. And here's the French Broad River. Let me get a laser pointer here. It's located at the confluence of the French Broad River here, Asheville's to the north, and Mud Creek, and Hendersonville's down here. And so we acquired this property in 2015. And as you can see here from this aerial, it's highly modified. It was in agricultural production since prior to the 1950s. And it has a lot of modifications because of that use. You can see that the land has been completely cleared. There's only narrow strips of vegetation along the French Broad River and along these drainage ditches, which facilitate draining this field so that agriculture can happen. You can also see this large subdivision here. All of the stormwater from this subdivision actually runs through these drainage ditches and directly into our surface water. So all of these anthropogenic features that I'm talking about, we discovered negatively affect water quality in our region. And so we were excited to get a hold of this tract and do something about that. Here is a view along the French Broad River, and I just wanted to show you this photo to show you this is a common practice. Farmers will push up debris and soil along the river to keep that water out when we have large rain events. Here's just another view showing these farm fields and the proximity to the subdivision. And I wanted to briefly show you this sort of regional view of our area. This is Rosman here in the corner, and Mills River and Asheville just off screen here. And this is a Google aerial image, and I just wanted to show that you can see the different color in the vegetation here. And this is all along the French Broad River. And so I wanted to show this just to point out that the French Broad River corridor has been, developed for agriculture almost to its entirety. I think over 95% of the French Broad River Valley is developed for that purpose. And so again, we just saw this as a really exciting opportunity to take a piece of property in this corridor and restore its natural function. So we worked with a whole bunch of partners to develop a whole slew of goals and objectives, as you can see here on the screen. And I'm going to go through a couple of them here shortly. But this map just shows what we ended up doing out here on this property. These yellow features are backwater sloughs. We created these to facilitate the spawning of a native fish in the French Broad River that is having difficulty spawning because the habitat no longer exists. So we created 3 of these. All of these blue polygons here are wetlands. So another goal of the project was to create a whole bunch of wetlands. We also created some pollinator habitat for our at-risk pollinators. And then everything that's not highlighted, we are managing to grow up into a montane alluvial floodplain forest, which is a rare natural community here in Western North Carolina. So I'm going to quickly go through some of these features and the importance of them. This is one of those backwater sloughs that we created. And as you can see, it's connected directly to the French Broad River. These habitats just don't exist in the region anymore because of the development that I was speaking about earlier. And so it's a really important feature because it allows a whole bunch of different wildlife to get out of the main channel of the French Broad River, which is always flowing. and relax and reproduce and raise their young. So a really important feature that we were happy to create. This is a view of that muskie I was speaking about. Very popular game fish in our region. We also created some wetlands. This one in particular was designed to take the runoff from the Riverstone subdivision here and funnel it through this wetland. So there's things like fecal coliform, pesticides, herbicides, all kinds of things that homeowners use that before this project were ending up right in the French Broad River. And so we created this wetland to slow that water down, spread it out, and allow those pollutants to be filtered and bioremediated. So really cool feature, just another view of it. We also broke those berms I showed you at the beginning of the presentation along the river, so that when we get large rain events, the river now has a place to go. It flows more easily onto the property. And that's really important for water quality because, again, it allows that fast moving water a place to dissipate, and the sediment can then kind of fall out. And then it also reduces that energy that's going downstream, which is important for downstream landowners and downstream flooding. We also stabilized the bank in areas that needed it, which prevents erosion and sedimentation into the surface water. We created an additional 5 or so acres of floodplain wetlands, which have a ton of importance for our native flora and fauna. And then the rest of the property we're allowing to grow into a montane alluvial floodplain forest. And certainly, maybe we can all imagine that by having a 100-acre property go from being almost having no vegetation to having a ton of vegetation, we can imagine that has a huge benefit on water quality and habitat for native plants and animals. And lastly, we created some pollinator habitats, mainly to support the at-risk monarch butterfly. The project also facilitates recreational and educational access, so folks can learn about this project and the importance of floodplain restoration. And then we partner with another organization to have a paddle trail campsite on the property. So it was a very successful restoration, and we are using it as a model to work on other properties in the French Broad River Valley. We've got 6 other restoration projects similar to this lined up to be completed in the next 3 to 4 years. So at the very least, it was a great project to drum up additional support for the work that we do. That was the brief overview. Thanks for listening, and I'm happy to take questions if there's time.
Thank you so much, David. I do see a question in the chat from Jen. Can the public visit the property through road access or by boat only?
Currently, it's by boat access only. You can paddle up and then hike on the property. But we recently acquired another 7 acres along a public road, and we have got grants out to develop that 7 acres into a trailhead. So we don't yet have access from a road, but we plan to in the next couple of years. Great question. Thanks.
Any other questions for David? Feel free to come off mute, put it in the chat. Give people a few seconds here to speak up.
Hey, David, thanks for coming and talking with us. Question for you. So I know I like tubed the French Broad a few times, like near Asheville before, but then I heard recently that it is really not safe pollution-wise to be doing that. What are the main causes of pollution in that area?
Yeah, and I think I'll start by saying I think you should be most concerned after large rain events. I think that's when our pollution levels are increased to a level that could be harmful to us. But you should always check. There's various ways to check on current pollution levels, thanks to another organization called Mountain True. But in our region, probably the most harmful, in my opinion, pollutant is actually sediment from development. This sediment it affects so many things in our rivers. Mainly the cobble substrate that we typically see in the French Broad River. That's so important for a number of rare and endangered species. And so I'm thinking of it maybe more as of an ecological perspective. That sediment is probably the most harmful. But then the other thing you hear a lot about is fecal coliform from cow farms and certainly from all of our furry dog pets. I was surprised to learn that's actually a large contributing factor to the fecal coliform content in our surface water is us not picking up after our pets. So I'd say those are probably the two most worrisome ones that I'm aware of in the French Broad River Valley.
Thanks for that question, Alex. That's fascinating about the pet waste. I feel like a lot of people don't think about that. And a lot of my friends are always like, I don't want to worry about that. I don't want to waste another plastic bag, but then you don't think about the other repercussions of it. So good to know. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, David, again. And thank you for all the work you guys do for protecting our land and water. Yeah, please feel free to reach out to, or hopefully it's okay to reach out to you, David. If you feel like putting your email in the chat, please do. And I encourage you all to look into their other wonderful projects.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.
We got one more speaker for those that are still here. I'm going to pass it over to Rachel. Feel free to start sharing your screen whenever you're ready.
Let's see. Can you see my presentation?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Bassesi. I'm an education coordinator for the North Carolina Coastal Federation at our central office, which is kind of in between Morehead City and Swansboro. And I was asked to help give a presentation on living shorelines today. I think my coworker Kelly Bodie usually is a member of this group and comes to the meetings, but she wasn't able to be here, so I'm filling in for Kelly. So hopefully I can do her justice because she is wonderful. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Coastal Federation first, and then some of the coastal environmental issues that we have here, and really focus in on shoreline erosion and solutions through living shorelines. And then if you have questions, please let me know or put them in the chat box. So the North Carolina Coastal Federation, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. We are a nonprofit organization that works to protect and restore coastal waterways and habitats. And we have 3 offices. So we have an office up in the Outer Banks in Wanchese, one in the central part of the coast, and then one down near Wilmington in Wrightsville Beach. So our work covers all of coastal North Carolina. And we also have about 30 staff members, I think a little bit more than 30 now, and 30 board members that govern the work that we do. And so within our organization, we have 5 main goals that we focus on, all kind of centering around healthy water quality, and then promoting living shorelines, which I'm going to talk about a lot about just now. But we also focus on restoring oyster habitat on the coast, as well as coastal management and reducing marine debris or marine litter in our waterways. And so this picture here is actually a student, a high school student that was helping to plant marsh grasses as part of a living shoreline. And along the coast, we have some environmental issues, unfortunately. There are issues that deal with shoreline erosion, stormwater runoff, just like David was mentioning, and marine debris and litter. And these are kind of centered around changes in climate change. You'll see flooding on the coast, polluted habitats, and those water quality issues that we have. So what are some solutions? How can we be a more resilient coast? Coastal resiliency is kind of the buzzword right now. So looking towards solutions, we really focus on living shorelines and nature-based solutions. So in that left picture, you see a living shoreline using recycled oyster shells and planted marsh grasses. And that's in Swansboro at Hammocks Beach State Park. And then in the middle, we've got a stormwater nature-based solution. That's a rain garden. And then I'm the education coordinator, so I'm always going to talk about education, how education can help to build coastal stewards and environmental stewards as well. So those are some students from East Carolina University helping us do a cleanup. So has anybody been to the coast recently? Let me know in the chat box. If you have probably seen signs of erosion. And so these are all pictures from our estuarine shorelines where we have saltwater and freshwater mixing together. And we have lots of areas on the coast where the sediment is just eroding away. So this is a pretty common occurrence in coastal North Carolina due to boat wakes, storm waves, human influences, upland erosion as well. And the traditional approach for protecting shorelines on the sound side or in our estuaries and our creeks is to build a hard structure called a bulkhead that you can see in this picture here. And what happens is that, if you can see my hand at the top, when the waves come in, they hit that hard structure, and then what happens is called scouring. They bounce back into the waterway, and you're going to, for the most part, lose any marsh habitat that you have in front of that hard structure. And so a living shoreline is an approach, it's kind of like an umbrella term for different methods to help protect the shoreline from erosion, but provide habitat at the same time. So these two pictures are actually at the same site. This is at Hammocks Beach State Park in their maintenance area. And what they did was they took out part of that seawall or that bulkhead, and they replaced it with a living shoreline. And here what they did in the early 2000s, so this project is over 20 years old, and we were out there yesterday and it looks great, if not better than it did when they first built it. But those rocks that they've placed offshore as like a little speed bump, or what we call a offshore sill, S-I-L-L, and then they planted marsh grasses behind it. So that living shoreline is going to help absorb the wave energy, and then the plants are going to help hold the soil in place with their roots and provide habitat and filtration as well. And a lot of times, unfortunately, bulkheads will fail after large storm events. So this is just a picture of one of those seawalls or bulkheads at Camp Albemarle, which is along the Bogue Sound after Hurricane Florence. And I'll show you in this picture right here, this is a living shoreline at Camp Albemarle directly adjacent to the bulkhead after Hurricane Florence. And so the living shorelines at this site used recycled oyster shells and marsh grasses to help protect from erosion, but provide habitat too. And it did really well after that large storm event that we had here in 2018. And there's a lot of research happening right now on living shorelines. So I don't want you to like try to read that abstract or anything, but there's a professor based out of East Carolina University, Dr. Rachel Gitman, who did a study on comparing impacts from hurricanes on bulkheads versus living shorelines. And so those pictures on the right, you can see 1 year before the hurricane, on kind of the left side, the bulkhead was in place, and then you've got a newly built living shoreline versus 1 day after Hurricane Irene. The bulkhead was unfortunately completely destroyed, but the living shoreline held up really nicely. And then these are some pictures after Hurricane Florence as well. The property owner that had this living shoreline, their dock was heavily damaged, but the living shoreline was not damaged at all. So that was exciting to see. And there's different ways that you can build them. Sometimes you just need to do a planting, which is a lot of fun. You can get marsh plants from local coastal nurseries and do plantings with your family or volunteers. Sometimes you want to build an offshore sill or that offshore speed bump that we talked about, that's going to help slow down the waves, and then plant behind it. And then sometimes you might have a little cliff along your shoreline and you want to build what's called a marsh tow revetment, which hugs the shoreline. And how do we plant? We have these fun little tools called dibble bars. That's actually me as a volunteer, I think years ago. And we dig a little hole with those tools and put the plugs in. And I wanted to show that picture of the little boy planting because anybody can do it. It's really easy. We like to involve students and the community in our planting efforts. And that picture in the bottom right is such a fun story. We work with student groups, and one time these students were just over it. I think they were like 5th graders, and they're supposed to plant the plants like 2 feet apart, and they just were tired, and so they planted the whole tray in one spot right there. And then we came back, and guess what section did the best? The section that those kids planted their tray in one spot. So we learned that you don't have to plant them as far apart as we first thought, and science has actually come back to back that fact up. But the students knew it first. So these are just some before and after photos of plantings at different sites along the Bogue Sound. And this is at Carteret Community College, some plantings, and then they've also done some offshore sills there. Sometimes we use recycled oyster shells, and I'm going to go quickly because I think I might be running out of time. I'm sorry, let me know if I am. And when we use the recycled oyster shells, the reason we do that is because oysters are really important for filtering our water. Let me know in the chat how many gallons of water you think an oyster can filter a day. Is it A, up to 2, B, up to 50, or C, up to 15? It looks like everybody's got it. It's up to 50 gallons of water a day. So that's about a bathtub size full of water that one little oyster can filter in a day. And if you've seen oyster reefs before, they kind of all grow on top of each other and clump together. So if we have healthy oyster populations, we're going to have healthy waterways as well. And let's see. Oh, got my animation in there. Forgot about that. So they're important for filtering. They're also vital food for different marine animals and people. Lots of people like to eat oysters. Let me know in the chat if you like to eat oysters, how you like to eat them. And they provide habitat for different animals in the estuary as well. So one healthy oyster reef can be home to up to 300 different species in the estuary, which is just amazing. Oh, color animation. And where do we get the shells? We usually purchase them from seafood companies in North Carolina. They bring a big tractor trailer load to us, and then we can use those for our projects. Sometimes people will donate them from oyster roasts or restaurants. And then we also have an oyster shell recycling program that we're trying to pick back up now that the state used to run, where we have different dumpster sites and trailers set up in communities for people to drop them off after they eat oysters just at home. Here's a couple before and after photos. This is at the Trinity Center in Pine Knoll Shores. You can see some of those offshore oyster reef seals and the plantings. And before I jump off, sorry, there's several different materials that you can use. There's one company called Oyster Reef Catchers, as well as oyster domes or reef balls. There's oyster castles that the Nature Conservancy uses a lot, reef maker systems, and then sometimes people just use rock or like we talked about, the planted marsh grasses. It depends on where you're at and the wave energy that you have at your site. So it's very site specific. And we have to take into consideration a lot of different things when you're building one. You do have to get a permit if you're putting something offshore or building any structure material in the waterway. So we have engineers and scientists that help do that design and help property owners go through those steps. And just to wrap up, I wanted to say, you know, humans, we influence shoreline erosion through development and boating activities. Traditional approaches like the seawalls or bulkheads can damage marsh habitat. And so we can be part of the solution and work with nature to protect our shorelines by using nature-based solutions like living shorelines. And that's my contact information there if you want to reach out to me. I will take questions now if we have time. Sorry for taking so long.
No worries at all, Rachel. Thank you so much. We do actually have a question far up in the chat from Jamie, which I'm actually curious about as well. Are living shorelines replicas of what is there prior to human development?
So we can't get it, you know, I think an exact replica of nature, but we try to do the best that we can. And so sometimes we'll look at baseline data and see what the shoreline looks like before any development, but a lot of times the shorelines have changed so much anyways that we kind of have to start as more of what we call a, gosh, the word is leaving me right now, but we just kind of fit it in the best that we can. So it's not always the exact nature way, but it's getting there. It's better than building a hard surface there, if that makes sense. I don't know that I answered that question too well, but I can send an email with a better answer.
No, I think that's great. And thank you for that question, Jamie. Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. We are over time. If you don't mind, Rachel, if you would put your email in the chat just in case people do have follow-up questions or want to learn more. And yeah, I thank you so much for presenting on this. I personally love them because they're beautiful instead of just walls. The living shorelines that I've seen are just very beautiful and peaceful to look at. So there's another added benefit. And yeah, thank you again for presenting today, and to David Lee. If you all are interested in learning more about our members' work, about Conserving Carolina and North Carolina Coastal Federation in particular, feel free to look them up in our Impact magazine, which I just linked in the chat. Our magazine highlights all of our members based in North Carolina and specific stories relating to environmental justice and climate action for this campaign season. So please look into that. You can also find our EIN and our State Employees Combined Campaign code number in there, and other ways that you can continue to learn about and support our members. So thanks again for tuning in today. I'm going to stay on for another few minutes just in case anyone has any questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. But thanks again for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.